ABC, this is a special edition of World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. It has been a long week for much of the world, and it is only the first week. Last Wednesday night, whatever you were doing right about now, the war in the Persian Gulf was beginning. The first cruise missiles, the first stealth fighters were evading Iraqi radar and sweeping in to bomb the Iraqi capital and hundreds of other targets. Today in Washington, from the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, an assessment of how it is going from their point of view. Very well from their point of view. We begin at the Pentagon with ABC's Bob Zelnick.
Secretary Cheney and Chairman Powell said that during the first week of war, Iraq's air defense system had been attacked and severely damaged. First, the early warning radar. Then the surface-to-air missile batteries and anti-aircraft guns had been hit. Now, Iraq is operating from only 5 of its more than 50 air facilities. 41 of its planes have been destroyed. Hundreds of others are hidden under concrete bunkers.
No Iraqi airplane has conducted a single ground attack against any coalition target.
As a result, Powell said the U.S. can conduct air operations without significant interference from the Iraqis.
Allied air forces have achieved air superiority over not only the Kuwaiti theater of operations, but throughout the entire theater to include Iraq. That is not to say that a young pilot who is taking off will say, Powell says we have air superiority, I've got nothing to worry about. Not at all. We're dealing with an enemy that is resourceful.
The U.S. also used air power to attack some of Iraq's most dangerous projects, its nuclear program.
The 2 operating reactors they had are both gone. They're down. They're finished.
Also, facilities where chemical weapons agents are produced.
We have done considerable damage to their ability to continue producing chemical weapons.
To prove U.S. claims, Powell displayed sketches representing satellite photos used in bomb damage assessments rather than the photos themselves. This sketch shows a damaged bunker complex.
I've laundered them so you can't really tell what I'm talking about because I don't want the Iraqis to know what I'm talking about. But trust me, trust me.
Now, the air war turns increasingly to the more than 500,000 Iraqi troops in Kuwait and southern Iraq, including 150,000 elite Republican Guard forces.
Our strategy to go after this army is very, very simple. First, we're going to cut it off, and then we're going to kill it. If it becomes necessary, we are assembling a fairly sizable ground force that could finish off the job should that be necessary.
Like Iraq's Air Force, Powell said the Army has hunkered down, taking no offensive action. There are scattered reports of hard-hit units and low morale, but little proof.
You really don't know how you're doing against an army until that army tries to perform its function. If it's just sitting there taking the punishment, we know we're hurting it. We really don't know how badly we've hurt it until it starts to move or until it comes up on the radio so we can hear it talking to other units.
So the strategy is to keep pounding Iraq's army from the air until it can be determined how much of a ground campaign will be needed to drive Iraqi forces from Kuwait. And once ground forces are committed, Cheney hinted victory could come swiftly.
Although I'm inclined to think, given the size of the force we've deployed and the success we've enjoyed to date, that it won't take that long.
Neither Cheney nor Powell predicted an easy U.S. victory, but they did respond to critics who have been suggesting in recent days that a combination of bad weather and clever Iraqi tactics were threatening to bog the U.S. down. Peter?
Okay, Bob Zelnick, thanks very much. At the Pentagon, just as that news conference was coming to an end at the Pentagon, the air raid sirens started to wail again in Israel and Saudi Arabia. 1 Scud missile was launched at Israel. A U.S. Patriot missile destroyed it. 3 explosions could be heard and seen over Dhahran in Saudi Arabia. It appears that Patriots also destroyed whatever number of Scuds were fired there. Well, the Scuds were a reminder, if one was needed, that Saddam Hussein still has the ability to lash out. Many military analysts in and out of active military service are more than somewhat curious about Saddam Hussein's strategy for next week and beyond. Here's our national security correspondent, John McCarthy.
Before the war, President Bush said Saddam Hussein did not understand what he would be hit with if he refused to get out of Kuwait. Now analysts say the Iraqi leader did anticipate much of it, and as a result has managed to preserve many of his military assets.
Well, they've been in their positions for around 5 months. You can dig very deep in 5 months. You can also disperse, and you can put in dummy targets that can divert our attention from the things we really want to go after. And I think Hussein may be very shrewdly riding this out.
There may well be surprises ahead for us. No one should assume that Saddam Hussein does not have significant remaining military capability.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs credits Iraq with many more combat planes than previously disclosed. Iraq has 800, he says, and the U.S. has thus far destroyed just 41. Many aircraft have been dispersed to primitive airfields in the north, even to highways or to fortified shelters. Iraq came into this war with a land force of nearly 1 million men. It is still very much intact. Even if Iraqi troops are softened up by repeated airstrikes, a ground war, if it comes, would be very rough.
It'll be dirty, bloody, and horrible. And there will be a lot of people killed and wounded. That will be a new ball game via the media to the American public.
A week into the war, Saddam Hussein still has an unknown number of Scud missiles to use as weapons of terror.
They can hide in the desert, they can come out at night and launch. It doesn't require any great degree of sophistication for them to be able to operate, and it's one of those problems that may be with us for some period of time.
So far, none of the Scud missiles has carried a chemical warhead, either because they don't exist or because Iraq has chosen not to use them for the moment. But if a ground war begins, analysts worry that chemical weapons will be used, launched as part of artillery barrages or from aircraft. And finally, Iraq has yet to play the terrorist card, which Saddam Hussein has repeatedly threatened he will use before all this is over. American analysts insist that Saddam Hussein cannot win on the battlefield, but they admit in losing, he still has the capability to inflict tremendous damage. Peter?
John, someone called us a few minutes ago to remind us that when President Eisenhower was a general, he said, every war is going to astonish you. What worries the analysts most?
I think it is the unpredictable elements that Saddam Hussein has shown he is capable of doing. He, of course, still has the terrorist element. He still has the chemical weapons element. They don't know how he is going to employ those tools, those different threats. But that's the sort of thing that they fear.
So knowing the weapons, but not the man.
Well, knowing the weapons, and of course the man, as you know, has been a tremendous puzzle all along.
Okay, John McCarthy at the State Department. Thank you. In a moment, we'll talk to our resident military analyst, Tony Cordesman. We'll talk about today's air war over Iraq. Did U.S. bombs damage a milk plant or a biological weapons factory? And another missile attack on Israel, this time